All right, and we're back to talk about law and many other things relating to law with Vic. He has researched law full-time for the last 7 years, and he's now on the line. Hello, Vic.
How you doing?
Great. How are you doing?
Laying in the hammock in the sun outside.
Whoa, you're doing pretty good then.
Not much better than that. When I first contacted you, Vic, I thought we were going to be talking about common law and maritime law, but we're going to be talking about a lot more than that, or sort of beyond that, right?
Yeah, it's all founded upon that, but that's not what this whole game is about. That's actually a deception to focus your mind on common law or admiralty law.
Okay.
Will take you away from finding the truth.
So maybe we could start by going back 7 years and asking what got you on the path you've been on.
It's a very good question. I was going to bring that to your attention anyhow. It was actually the audio for Ed Griffith, for the author of the book Creature from Jekyll Island.
Oh, yeah.
And after listening to his 1 hour audio tape, it just confirmed my inside feelings that something wasn't quite right, or what I'd been told was not the truth. And I believe that all of us question things from time to time, and we end up making sense of things that really don't make sense, or we're too busy to focus in on and really think about these things.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was my turning point, and my life was never the same since. Up until that point, I was like everyone else, a taxpayer, a guy that went to work 9 to 5, or I was actually self-employed, but working my butt off like everyone else to get ahead in life, and making some progress, but it's a restricted progress. And so for all intents and purposes, I was no different than the majority of the people out there, and I'm still no different. I've just acquired some knowledge, that's all.
Mm-hmm.
And anyhow, that culminated after the Creature from Jekyll Island. I got in the internet, and that led to reading almost every single solitary federal statute. And I'm talking all the laws and things I would talk about on this call or any call is all Canadian material.
Right.
I'm not going to talk about U.S. law. It doesn't apply here, and if it does, you'd have to argue with the court. So it's all Canadian content, and that's because that's the soil I'm on, so I don't want to talk about other countries or their laws, rules, regulations, or the foundation or the principles and that sort of thing.
So after all of your research, you sort of come up with the conclusion, basically, that law is fiction. How did you come to that conclusion?
Well, it was some of the other, I'll call them teachers, maybe messengers is a better word than teachers, but there's many other people out there that have been teaching. I don't know if I can mention their names on here or not, so I won't, that actually introduced those concepts.
It's fine with us.
Okay, folks like David Wood Miller was one of my mentors for a couple of years, and his knowledge on contract and admiralty law opened my eyes up and led me to do some research on contract, and which is just really the basis of admiralty law and international contracts. All contracts are international from the legal world's perspective. And this is the thing, people have to appreciate that there are two worlds in this one world, and we have to decide which world we are of. Are we of the legal system, and do we recognize the legal system, or are we of God, and we recognize our natural capabilities and our free will? And the problem, from my perspective, what's happened with people here is that we've all gotten wrapped up in listening to government business. See, the government in Ottawa, we'll talk about the federal government and work down from there to the provinces. Ottawa is the federal district in this country, and it's called the government house. And you have to look at, or you should consider looking at the government house like your house. In your house, you have rules. But the rules in your house have nothing to do with the rules in my house.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when the government speaks, they're speaking from their house, and their house actually has nothing to do with my life one iota, or yours. But because we believe that their government business is our business, we got all wrapped up in their business. But the fact of the matter is, government business is completely separate from people business. And we've allowed our minds to get wrapped up in government affairs. And my philosophy is now when the government speaks, I do not listen. In fact, I don't even turn the TV on anymore, because it's a brainwashing medium, as is the education system, as far as from my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to say, too, before I forget, that I'm not asking anyone to believe a single solitary thing I say. All I would ask is that you go and do your own homework and verify it or chuck it in the garbage, but I'm not here to prove anything to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then the powers in this country of the legal power, again, which has nothing to do with people. Remember when in the Bible there, and this has nothing to do with the churches or so-called religion, but Jesus did say you cannot serve two masters. And I'll tell you right here, right now, that every man, woman, and child I know in this country has decided to serve the government legal master and not our true master, and that's the reason we're all suffering. We don't know who we are. We believe government has the right and authority to tell us what to do and how to live our lives, and that is not true. However, it's been going on for so long now, it has actually become an integral part of our beingness and our life, so people actually, when the government says jump, they say how high. And everything is backwards. People are the authority. It is the people that empower government, not the other way around. They work for us. We don't work for them.
And so how has it come to be the other way? How have we come to view the government as our master? Because I mean, I agree. I think that is the case. That and certainly people. All people, I think, that I know believe in the justice system, and the courts are fair and all of this kind of stuff.
Well, that's right, and that's really not the case. That is government business. After it took me 7 years to get here, so as I said earlier, I've been in this for 7 years, and the last 5 full time. And it wasn't until recently that we finally found out what is the bonding agent. What is it that got me from being a creation of God, or like a free tree or a free dog, all of a sudden to being told by the government how to live my life.
Mm-hmm.
When we were children, before we were of so-called legal age, children were free. The system never bothers children.
Mm.
And there's a reason for that. It's because they're not of legal age to make their own decisions yet. In other words, you're only held accountable for what you do based on your own decisions. In other words, if one of you decides to rob a bank and I have nothing to do with it, you're going to jail for robbing the bank. It's your decision. And but ultimately, what the binding agent is the registration of birth process. That's what started it. That is the beginning of our trespass into the government house business, and it is also the way out.
And so, what happens when we register a birth? What takes place there that makes us come under the government and under the law?
All right, fair enough. I'm going to talk about from the Ontario perspective because that's where I'm located, and I'm very familiar with Ontario law. And contrary to everyone's belief, everyone I know, they believe that when their parents registered the birth, they registered their birth, the birth of the child.
Mm-hmm.
First off, the parents did not register anything. Their only obligation under the law, under threat of prosecution, by the way, so it's not voluntary, is that they provide certain information on what's called a statement of birth. I think out in British Columbia that's called the registration of live birth.
Yeah.
Now, all the parents have, you're alleged, and I'm going to say your alleged mother and father, and you have to think about that because you really don't know for certain that your mother and father is your mother and father, and I'll cover that as we go through this call, why. But so the alleged parent's obligation is to provide information on the form, the name of the mother, the name of the father, the name for the child, and then they sign that document certifying it true and correct. What people have to realize is that when someone signs something true and correct that you had nothing to do with, you are simply not a party to that, one iota.
So the
concept that your parents registered your birth is a load of bull. They provided information that the government compels parents to provide under threat of prosecution. It's a $50,000 fine in Ontario if they don't, but it's the province that actually does the registration.
So this is a very important thing then. I mean, if there's such a big fine on it, I know that if you don't, for instance, hand in your census material, you get a $58 fine or some small fine. So that's right. It's a big deal then.
Well, that's right. No, the census is another issue, and it begs the question: where does the government get the right to command me to comply with the census and pay and force me or fine me to pay money if I don't?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of this call, you should have the answer for that, or be on your way to the answer for that, because the fact of the matter is they do not have jurisdiction over you. They cannot tell you to do anything, and they certainly can't fine you for not complying.
And yet they do all the time, and people
That's right.
go to prison and pay fines.
That's right.
Getting back to the registration of birth thing, when you're saying about the third person not being a party to it, does that mean, for example, when I registered my daughter, she didn't knowingly...
That's exactly right.
Agree to it.
She was not a knowledgeable participant.
Right.
She was a fetus. Am I correct?
Yeah, or she was a newborn.
Okay, let me get to this, just to plant the seed in people's minds. You have to ask yourself, do you know your date of birth? And I'm going to tell you, you don't. Because you have absolutely no memory of the day your head first popped out of your mother's uterus. You have no knowledge whatsoever of your date of birth. What you do know is what you were told.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not liable for what someone else tells you. You're liable for what you know. So the truth of the matter is you have no concept what your date of birth is, and there isn't a man, woman, or child on this planet that has first-hand knowledge of his date of birth. In other words, we're all relying on what other people said, but you're not liable for what you don't know. So if you want to say you know your date of birth, then you've just incriminated yourself, because the truth is you don't really know it, and no one does. And every charge on every claim made in this country has a name and a date of birth stuck to it. The system cannot move against a name that does not have a date of birth attached to it, and the reason for that is because the system knows you don't know your date of birth, but if you choose to believe you know your date of birth, then you will believe your name is on the birth certificate, when in fact it is not.
It's not your name?
No. Remember,
so
who provided the information on the statement of birth was the mother and father.
Mm-hmm.
The party that registered that. Now think about when you're registering a business. Who's securing the rights and privileges by being the registrant? In other words, if your radio station there, for example, is a registered corporation, let's say for argument's sake, one of you is there, the husband and wife here, James, went ahead and registered that business. It's your signature on that registration. So what you did there is you secured the rights in the name and any benefits and privileges that flow from it. In other words, you own that name because you did it. You were the registrant. In the case of the registration of birth, you did not register your own birth. The province did that. So they owned the information. They secured the rights in the information on the statement of birth. Fact.
Didn't our parents register the name?
No. They provided the information on the form. The province does the registration. The parent's only obligation, again, is to provide information. It is the province that accepts and registers that information.
So essentially, if the baby is the product, or let's say the product,
exactly
then
what it is.
The province is the owner of that product?
That's exactly what they're treating. They're treating human lives as exactly that, products. It's actually a chattel property. We are the collateral for the debt here. The human beings are being treated as collateral. However, it's only happening because we believe our name is on the birth certificate. So let's go back to the statement of birth. That's the first thing that happens, is the registration of the statement of birth. If there's no statement of birth, then a birth certificate cannot be issued, because the information on information on a birth certificate is extracted from information on a statement of birth. Okay, so whatever information is on the statement of birth, the province extracts name, date of birth, other particulars, and gives it a registration and certificate number, and then issues the certificate. But at no point here yet has the fetus, now a child, let's say, or a man or a woman, we didn't have anything to do with that. Your signature is not on any of it. Now, if your signature is not on a contract, were you there? No. You're not a party to the event. And here's what the registrar told us in the province of Ontario. I went and talked to her face-to-face with 3 other people, and this is the woman that's responsible for registration of birth, the Change of Name Act, and issuing birth certificates. And here is what she said, word for word. The government does not register people, it registers events. So a birth certificate is proof of an event. The event was the birth of a fetus. A birth certificate is not and was never intended to be, now get this, personal identification. But it evolved into that, is what she said. So listen, I'm going to say that again.
Okay.
A birth certificate is not and was never intended to be, from the government's perspective, it was never intended that you use it as personal identification. It evolved. Question is, how did it evolve?
Mm-hmm.
And if a birth certificate is not personal identification, then what kind of identification is it? What do they call it? Government identification. So the birth certificate is actually identifying the government that owns the name on the birth certificate. It does not identify your body. But if you choose to believe it does, then it does. But not in fact, only because of your belief. And this is where God kicks in. We all have the free will aspect to choose.
So the government will kind of happily promote that misconception that it is your body, but it isn't. It's just simply a name.
That's all it is. It's a standalone name. And at no time did the government, and I'll say this, the government did not force any of us to make this choice. We made it on our own. And as I was talking to James earlier, we should have known there's a difference between a God-given name and a government-given name. Remember what Jesus said, you cannot serve two masters. Well, you either have a God-given name and you serve God in that name, or you have a government-given name and you're going to serve government, which is the world of commercial activity, common law, equity, admiralty law, courts, fines, payments, driver's licenses, permits, certificates. All of that is government house business.
And all of the identification little cards that we accrue during our life, the social insurance number, the driver's license, passport, it all begins with the birth certificate. Exactly. Without a birth certificate, you could not get any of those.
So then moving on to, as this child that we're talking about gets older, what happens when they acquire a social insurance number? What then?
It's acquiring the social insurance number is not the issue. It's when you first use it to gain employment.
Okay.
Now remember, the word employ means to use. So when we went and used the birth, and you got to have a birth certificate. Check with the Social Development Canada. If you don't have a birth certificate, you cannot get a social insurance card.
Mm-hmm.
And all they're doing is they're taking the name off the birth certificate and putting it on the social insurance card. And then the very first time that you use that social insurance card to gain employment, that is now recorded in the system that you just joined the Money Masters. That is called confirmation. So what happened here? What did you confirm? You confirmed your choice to be recognized by the name on the birth certificate that is not your name or property.
Because who's
and that's how you became property of the government.
We were talking earlier about the intellectual property rights of the name.
That's right.
So maybe we should go over that.
Yep.
Just quickly, that you say you were when I spoke with you earlier, Vic, you said, of course, that in order to claim intellectual property rights over something, you have to have created that thing in your own mind.
You have to be the author.
Yeah.
The author of a book is the one that can copyright it. Now, the author can license others to duplicate it or even sell the rights in it, correct?
Yes.
But if that didn't happen with you and I.
With our names.
That's right. So if anyone on this call cares to take a look at their birth certificate, you got to ask themselves a simple question. Did the name on that birth certificate that I've been using all of these years, did that name come from my head? And if the answer is no, then you agree that it's not your intellectual property.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is no on every single solitary certificate because it was the government agent that put the name on that birth certificate, not the individual using the birth certificate. And we contacted the Canadian Bank Note Company. If you look on your birth certificate, most of them have very, very fine print. You need a magnifying glass. It says in there very, very, very fine print on the birth certificate. Not all of them, but most of them. Canadian Bank Note Company.
They make the birth certificate?
That's right. So we contacted their legal department, and their legal department told us two things: that the paper that a birth certificate is written on is the same paper that the legal tender is printed on. It's called exchequer bill paper. It's a security paper. And you and I cannot be in possession of that paper without committing a criminal offense. It's the king's paper. Anything on that kind of paper is property of the king.
Oh, my God.
The other thing they said was that the information on a birth certificate is intellectual property of our client. And the client, of course, is the province of issue of the birth certificate, because I know I'm not a client of the Canadian Bank Company, and I know you're not. I don't know you're not, but I would assume you're not.
I'm not.
But that's just works. Think about it logically. Now the Canadian banknote company is saying it's intellectual property of the province, and the reason for that is because it didn't come from your head.
But it did come from my parents' head.
No.
Oh, how so?
The one on the statement of birth came from your parents' head, but the one on the birth certificate is different.
Because of the paper it's printed on?
No, because of what they did. The statement of birth has a line for the family name, and under that it has a line for the given names. There's no mention of any middle name here, by the way. Okay? There's no such thing as a middle name, but you're allowed to believe that there is. And how many people out there will ask for a middle name, will put the third name they have, that's the middle name on the birth certificate or whatever, as the middle name? No, there's no such thing as a middle name. There's given names and there's surnames. So the statement of birth / registration of live birth has a line for family name and given names. But on the birth certificate, it just says name, and it has the surname followed by a comma, followed by the given names. Now, I don't know about you guys, but whenever you put a comma between two words, it's not one word, it's two words. Look at it this way. If I was to say to you, water pump, what would come to mind? A water pump. But what if I put a comma between the word water and pump?
Right.
Now we're talking about water and a pump.
Yeah.
So you see, it changes the scope of what we're dealing with. Real simple basics right in front of our face. We all went to school to learn how to read and write and understand the meaning of the comma. But yet when someone says, what's your name? Then you look at the birth certificate, you automatically assume that the first part before the comma is the surname and that the next two are the given names.
Right.
I'm not following the significance of that.
The point is that the information on the statement of birth was put there by your parents, but the information, so they have intellectual property rights in this information on the statement of birth, but the name that was put onto this birth certificate itself is different than it appears on the statement of birth, and it was done by a province, a provincial agent.
I see.
So they changed it by reversing the order and putting a comma in the middle?
Just so they could say it came from our head.
Oh, so that they then own that property?
They have the intellectual property rights, which is exactly what the Canadian banknote company said, which fits in with the whole concept that a birth certificate is not personal identification. The reason it's not personal identification is your name is not on there.
So my name is Julie Chadwick, but if I agree to that this thing is me, the Chadwick, Julie,
then it is.
Then I am the property of the government, essentially, because I'm saying that I agree to that?
That's exactly right. You hit it right on the head. As hard as it may be to believe, but you see, when you use the word, if you believe your name is on the certificate, then you sold yourself into slavery by making the choice. In other words, the government didn't force it upon you. They give you a choice. And here's the thing. Every single solitary birth certificate is delivered with a choice.
Well, there's not much of a choice if you get a $50,000 fine if you don't.
Well, just a second here. The choice, let's go back in time here. The choice is whether or not to be recognized by the name on the certificate.
Okay.
Now, if you choose to be recognized by the name on the certificate, that's why you're being fined. But if you chose not to be recognized by the name on the certificate, could you be fined? No.
So then how would a person knowing this kind of information, how would they go about, like if something was sent to them or whatever, saying, is this you or to Chadwick, Julie, how would I go about saying, no, that's not me? Like, in what situation would that work and how would that play out?
Well, it's like this, and I like to do the role-playing thing, and this is really, really simple. All you need is two people, and get out a birth certificate and play this in your living rooms. Have one of the individuals play the part of the government.
Okay.
Have the other one play the part of the child, or the one that's receiving and going to use the birth certificate. Okay, and the one that's playing the role of the province, in his head, he knows that he owns the name on the birth certificate. He's not telling the child, but he in fact knows that he is the legal owner of the name on the birth certificate. Then he gives you the birth certificate. And that's all he just gives you the birth certificate. And then you see the name on the birth certificate, and because it looks similar to the one you heard your mother and father calling you, that you eventually started to respond to as you got older, you go, in your mind, you say, that's my name. And so now it is. But in fact, it is not, because, again, the party that's playing the role of the province here is saying, here's a birth certificate. I'm giving you a certificate that has my name on it. And that name is my property. The only thing is they didn't tell us that. It's up to us to recognize whether it is or isn't our name. So during this role-playing process, so let's say, James, you played the part of the province and you gave me the birth certificate. And I used the birth certificate for 25 years. I'm out there buying cars, buying homes, getting bank accounts, credit cards, social insurance cards, you know, like basically everyone does.
Yeah.
And then after 25 years, I go, holy smokes, James, I just discovered that the name on this birth certificate is your property, which you know to be true. James, I don't know what I was thinking here, but just so we're clear on this, I'm going to give you notice here now, James, that I'm no longer going to be recognized by your name. Now, you know you're the legal owner. What are you going to do?
I don't think there's much I can do.
Pardon me?
I can't force you to.
That's exactly right.
But don't you already have a contract with them that does
no, there's no contract. No, where's the contract? I'm using James's property, the name. It's his name.
Right.
At no time did he transfer his intellectual property rights in that name to me.
Oh, so you're sort of like, thank you very much for the years of usage, but I'm gonna get this back to you now.
Thanks, but no thanks.
Okay.
Now, there's one other thing I got to say here. Keeping in mind is if I was using James's name, thinking it was my name, and in the end it's really not my name, it's not really his name except that he owns it. Now it becomes a name for a business, and that's in fact what it is. Because to carry on to do transactions in this country, as you were alluding to before, they made it impossible to interface without a birth certificate and all this government identification. It is, in fact, a business name. So the other thing I got to say to James in this scenario is, okay, James, I've just discovered that the name on the birth certificate is actually your property. So I'm giving you notice now that I'm no longer going to be recognized by it, which means now James has to be recognized as the debtor. Further, James, I'm no longer going to pay any bills in this name.
And so you're essentially saying this to the government.
That's exactly what we're saying.
And so now me being the provincial government, I have to take on all of those bills.
Because he legally owns it.
You know what? This is a real simple call. We just finished it right there. You guys are real smart. Because, James, you just said exactly what the truth is. Because you own the name, and anything being purchased in that name is your property, who's liable to pay, me or you? You is the owner of the name.
He owns the business, right?
That's right.
So, okay, this
the point. So,
sounds very exciting, but how does it play out in reality? Have you seen examples where people have tried this?
Little ones. We're just in the thick of it now. I just actually, two of us actually, I work with a friend who's on the same page as me. It's very hard to find people that are like-minded. And, seeing...
I think a few of them might be listening to the show right now.
I'm sorry?
I think a few of them like-minded people might be listening to the show right now.
And I don't doubt that. But we still have differences in our thinking.
Okay.
And but Lee and I work together every day. And so he and I just 2 weeks ago, or pardon me, last week, sent that notice to the government. But when we sent the notice, you see, it's also in the law. The choice is in the law. So we showed them the law that says, hey, I didn't realize this 30 years ago, but I have a choice on this thing here to be recognized by your name or not. And your law says right here that I can abandon that choice anytime I so choose. So here you've got notice today that I've abandoned the choice to be recognized by the name on the certificate. I'm no longer going to be the surety or pay your debts. And further, I'm going to continue to use your name. Where do you want me to send the bills? Now, they cannot ask you for the name back. You want to know why?
Why?
Two things. It's not in the law. They don't have any authority to ask it back. And secondly, then it would become fraud. Think about this.
Okay, which name were they asking for back? Or they can't ask?
That's what I'm saying. They cannot ask you to give the birth certificate back. In other words, when you give notice that you have made the choice not to be recognized by the name on the birth certificate, there was never personal identification in the first place. It only evolved because I believe my name was on it. Once I give you that notice, no one can recognize my body by that name anymore. So the province has to go into the system and make some changes because now that the name's not my name, it's the province's name. Do you think the province is going to charge its own name?
You mean taxes?
What would be the point of billing your own business? What are you going to get?
Are you talking about taxes, billing its own business?
Fines,
anything.
Whatever.
Fines, right.
If the province owns, the only reason the cops are charging that name and issuing tickets into your pocket is because you still haven't done something. You believe it's your name on the driver's license, so you believe you got to pay the fine.
essentially going back to it, you believe that your name is, for me, Chadwick, Julie. And also there's an issue of it all being in capital letters, is there not?
No.
Okay.
No, that used to be, but it's beyond that. Let me address that point right there this way, because I spoke to James earlier. I'm going to give you a hypothetical. Let's say I'm in possession of a birth certificate that has the name Doe, John Howard on it. If I'm not recognized as Doe John Howard any longer, who is?
No one.
Government?
Well, no, the owner.
Oh, okay.
The owner is the provincial government.
Which is the government.
That's right.
Okay.
See, so the only reason I'm being recognized by the name on the birth certificate is because I chose to be.
Mm-hmm.
Through my stupidity, ignorance, it's my fault. However, when I come back to James, who is representing the government in this little example, and give him this information, then if I'm not John Howard Doe as on the birth certificate, then the province is, because that name would not exist had they not created the intellectual property.
Okay.
It wouldn't be out there in the marketplace. It could never exist. I didn't bring it into existence. The government did. And we also have to appreciate that a name on paper is not, if you didn't put the name on paper, it's not your name. Just because it looks like your name is the one that's in your head.
Mm.
Nowhere else. Any names on paper has nothing to do with you, and all the names they're using against us is that information is coming out of the government system. But we didn't put it there, they did.
So essentially when a bill comes to your house and it says, Chadwick, Julie, Helen, please pay this amount of money, if you just look at it literally as what it is, I don't ever call myself Chadwick Julie, so I could say, this isn't addressed to me, basically. Is what you're saying?
Yep. But that's not enough. You see, we've all adopted the name as if it is, to the extent that there's information about that name in the credit reporting bureaus now. And that information did not get in there except a human being allowed it to get there. And the information in the credit reporting bureaus is the evidence that they're using against you to prove that you have income. In other words, you're living on the monopoly board, which has got nothing to do with God. You're in the land of buying and selling, limitations, money, taxation. Everywhere where Jesus said not to go. We're all in it, every one of us.
Now I'm thinking about when the first thing that happens in a courtroom when the defendant is called to the stand, the first thing they do is please state your name. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
So what?
That's an IQ test.
Do we
better know who you are?
And if you were to say, I like give a different name, or say that I don't recognize I don't recognize that as my name, what can they do?
This is where you got to be careful. First off, you cannot go in court and say that's not my name, because then they're just going to say, why are you here? And if it's over a mortgage default and the defendant doesn't appear, they're going to give judgment to the bank. So our way, I'm not saying this is the way, our way to approach that is when they call a case and they call the name, they're going to call the name that's on the same, it's related to the one on the birth certificate. You just need to know that. Mm-hmm. You would stand up and say, Your Honor, and again, this is just an example, I'm not telling you what to say. Your Honor, I'm here in relation to that matter. If you kindly look on your desk, you'll see that I dropped you off a copy of the law from the province of Ontario that says I have the right to abandon the right to be recognized by this name. And I'm just letting this court know that I'm here because I have an interest in the matter, but I am not to be recognized by the name on that charge over there.
The law in Ontario allows people to...
They use the word abandonment.
Yeah.
I mean, you're abandoning the legal fiction that is your name?
You're abandoning. This is about recognition.
Yeah. Okay.
The law in Ontario entitles the holder of a birth certificate to be recognized by the name on the birth certificate. What they're saying there is we're giving you the rights, if you so choose, to be recognized by our property being the name on the birth certificate. Okay, so they're basically licensing you like a franchise. You know, for example, McDonald's, the owner of Tim Hortons restaurant chain, he has rights in the name Tim Hortons, and only he can license a franchisee to use it, and only upon the provided certain terms and conditions are met. Mm-hmm. I.e., give me $1 million and sign this contract and give me the royalties, and I will allow you to use the Tim Hortons name, which is my property. But you can always refuse the offer, right? You don't have to accept. The government essentially is doing the same thing. So the statute in Ontario is licensing the people in Ontario, to be recognized by a name that is not their name. But you don't have to accept it. And if you did accept it, it doesn't change the fact that it's not my name, that name is someone else's intellectual property. So it doesn't matter how long I use that name, the rights in that property never transfers to me. It remains with the intellectual property holder, barring any sale agreement or actual a licensing agreement in writing that says, yep, I'm licensing Vic, and Vic gave me $500 to have the right to be recognized by this name, and I'm licensing him for that purpose. None of that exists. The point is that the government simply gave us the right to claim to be recognized by the name on the certificate, which was really just giving you a choice.
So we've only got about 5 minutes left here, but what I guess we should have asked this earlier, but why does the government need to go through this big rigmarole in order to to have, why do they have to do this in order to get us into a court of law, or in order to get us to...
That's the thing. And everyone that wants to do that, they only want to relate this to court activity. The only reason we're talking about court activity because we have all been there, or for the most part, and the only reason we got there is because we already made the choice to be recognized by the name on the certificate. In other words, you won't stop. Nothing's going to change in your life until you change your mind. This whole thing is no more complicated than Jesus said. Be not conformed to this world, but be renewed. But be transformed with the renewal of your mind. Is to appreciate that, geez, I made a choice to be recognized by a name that someone else owns. So I guess if I change my mind and give them notice of my choice not to be recognized by the name, it takes me back to the point in time like I had the choice when I was 17 years old. And so everything that has happened to us becomes undone. You're no longer the debtor. The only reason they're looking at you as the debtor is because you believe you're the name of the debtor, which is the name on the birth certificate. That's the debtor. So the government did not do this at all to entrap us. They put a birth certificate on the table in front of your face. We all adopted it and said, oh, that's my name on that certificate. That's my certificate. So they made us an offer. They made us a real silent little offer. They just stuck it in your face and then let you do the rest.
So in a way, it evolved into what it is now because it sort of was a matter of convenience for the government, I suppose.
It's not even that. Remember, when the registrar in the province of Ontario said it was never the intention of the government that a birth certificate is personal identification, what she was really saying is it was never the government's intention that you people act like debtors. Because you want to know something, folks? It's impossible for people to be a debtor. Who do you think's backing the whole system? The sole source of commercial energy in Canada, I'm just going to talk about Canada, is labor. Mm-hmm. I don't care how much gold is in them thar hills. If you don't have the labor to dig it out, it is worthless. So it's not the gold, it's not the money, it's not the house, it's not the cars. It is the labor. And only people have labor. Corporations don't have labor. They exist in name only. It is the labor that is the source of wealth. So it is the laborer that is the creditor, not the debtor. But until the laborer wakes up to that fact, he's going to continue to act like a debtor, which is just purely evidence he does not know who he is. And that's the whole message from Jesus, was to show us the way to discover who we really are here and that we are the authority. So the authority is not in Ottawa. It's you.
Why
do you think the government calls themselves the authorities? To make you believe they're the authority.
Yeah.
But they're not. You are. I am. Each of us. They're the civil servants. It says that. But if you're acting like the name on the birth certificate, guess what? You're classified as a person. And a person is defined in law to mean a corporation.
It's defined in law to mean that?
Absolutely. Corporation. It's all over the TV. It's, as I said before, James, look on the brand new $50 bills. It says right on there, women are persons. That's an oxymoron. What do you mean women are persons? Either women are women, or there's no women, there's all persons. But how can a woman be a person? Women are women. See, God is not a respecter of persons. How can God respect a corporation? It exists in name only on a piece of paper. There's nothing to respect.
And it's
can't do anything.
A human invention.
Well, that's right. But the distinction is, you know, I would never refer to a man, woman, or child as a person, but yet everyone else does.
Because
what you're saying is, without even knowing it, is you're identifying your friends as corporations. And if you talk like that in a court, you're going to jail.
And you're identifying your friends as legal fictions, then.
Absolutely. If they agree with you, then the court's going, well, the guy believes he's a legal fiction. I know he's a man, but he believes he's a legal fiction, and this law pertains to legal fictions, and this law says he's got to go to jail for 15 years for robbing a bank.
So we just got to kind of wrap up here. But what I'm wondering, just as a last point, is what all the implications are in this in terms of like, what is the first step? Is the first step doing as what you said to inform the government?
The first step is to identify where did the birth certificate come from? What's the source of it?
Yeah.
Identify the government ministry or agency that is responsible for issuing birth certificates, and you want to get notice to them. Oh, by the way, thanks for the offer to be recognized by the name on the birth certificate, but I'm waiving it or abandoning it.
And what have you had any reaction so far to your doing that?
From the province, I haven't checked the mail in about 4 days. And like I say, mine went in the mail on, they received it on the 31st. But the law is the law. You see, it says right here in front of my face on the law that the Change of Name Act uses 4 names. They define the word change to mean 4 different things. There's 4 choices there, not one. Everyone in the marketplace will say you have to change your name. No, it doesn't say that here. It says I can add to it, I can alter it, I can substitute it, and I can abandon it.
Wow.
So when the law says I can abandon it, guess what? I can abandon it.
Wow.
Now, who wants to offend the law? Not me. The law says I can abandon it. If you're saying I can't abandon it, then you're the offender, not me, because it says here I can. Remember, government agents follow the law.
Right.
They can only do what it says in front of their face in their statutes.
And so what happens once it is abandoned? I guess that's sort of the experimental phase, because we don't know yet.
Nope, just like James said. No, I've sent bills already over there. I can't give you answers yet. You want to give me a call in about a month, I'll give you some more updates.
Okay, well, I think we'll
James already answered the question. When you choose not to be recognized by the name, then the owner of the name now has to pay the bills.
Right.
And if the owner of the name doesn't want to pay the bills, then clearly they issued the certificate to you for purposes of fraud.
Wow.
But that was not the intention. Remember, it was never intended to be personal identification. It evolved, and it evolved because we believed our name was on the certificate, so we made it happen.
Wow.
So the trick is to find out who you are. That was the whole message from Jesus Christ. It's not about churches and religion. Don't go there. This is all. I read the New Testament from the commercial perspective. It's commercial law. That is admiralty law. But there's the old Mosaic law in the Old Testament, all contractual matters, and the New Testament is you do out of love. You can't make promises. You get involved in a legal marriage, it's got nothing to do with God. You're just connected with the federal government. It's an amalgamation of persons, corporations. So, but otherwise, I've had lots of people call, and I just tell them, oh, I'm sorry, you might have formally recognized me as Victor Beck, but I've made my choice and given that notice over to the government over there that I've abandoned the right to be recognized by that name.
So you don't know of anyone else that's ever tried to do this in Canada?
Other than Lee and myself, no.
Okay. I just was wondering if there's any other precedent for it. All right, well, we'll be keeping in touch with you then to see what develops. Definitely keep us informed. It's a very interesting situation.
Sure, well, I'm sure Terry will keep you up to speed, too. You know Terry there.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks very much, Vic. It's been an illuminating 40 minutes. And please, we'll stay in touch. We'd like to know how things proceed for you.
Yep, and just one little parting comment from me is, folks that are listening on the call, don't believe anything I said. Get out the books and do your own work and discover whether it's true or not for yourself.
Cool, yeah.
And you've got the power. Don't put your faith in me, put it in yourself. Get the books out. Get the dictionaries, the law dictionaries, and the non-law dictionaries, because law definitions don't have the same meaning as the words you and I use every day.
Right.
So when you say left in a courtroom, when you're thinking left, it could mean pay.
Right.
So you need to know the words. And Jesus said, my people will suffer for a lack of knowledge. So get the knowledge, folks. The knowledge is the law that's being used against you. And there's one little statute, I'm not going to tell you what it is in B.C., that would help you folks. We'll save that for the next call.
All right. Cliffhanger.
Part 2. But anyhow, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks, Vic. Enjoy your hammock. We'll talk to you soon.
I shall, and you too.
Bye-bye. All right, folks. That is simply Vic calling from somewhere in Ontario.
And he is a guy who has been researching law full-time for the last 7 years. And as he was saying, he recommends that all of you do that as well.